Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy The Vexed Vampire, written by semiloki. Vampire, werewolf, goblin, or ghoul, it didn't matter the breed. Soon enough they all ended up at the same place, the White Castle. Stake out one of those long enough and all manner of weird creatures would drift inside. It makes sense, really. One of the side effects of the parasite is that it ramps up the metabolism to a ridiculous level. It's what allows them to heal in a matter of minutes and what would take days or weeks for a normal person. I've seen a vampire take 2 shotgun blasts to the chest and still not go down. The wounds were closing up faster than it took to reload. I aimed for his head on the 3rd time. That stopped him. I felt sort of bad about that one, actually. Like a lot of afflicted, he was a former junkie. Unlike most, he didn't learn his lesson and didn't give up the life. Maybe it was all he knew how to do. He apparently kept quiet about his condition, and when a drug deal went sour, some poor schmuck locked him up in a room for 8 hours with no food. He was a vamp, and vamps have to eat every 4 hours, or the parasite starts cannibalizing the host. Unfortunately, as far as the parasite is concerned, that 3.5 pounds of fat inside the skull is just as good a source of food as any. They call it the rage. As the parasite starts eating away the brain, the afflicted become very strong, very aggressive, and very, very angry. Extreme tolerance for pain and almost zero self-preservation instincts. By the time I arrived, we already had 6 dead dealers and a few $1,000s worth of structural damage to the building. If it hadn't been daytime outside, the situation would have been a lot worse. My point is that the afflicted need a steady supply of protein 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no time off for good behavior. The smart ones keep a stash of beef jerky on them at all times. Yes, vampires eat beef jerky. Try keep up. Since the hunger pangs hit on a fairly regular schedule, most afflicted tended to develop predictable patterns. They didn't like to be too far away from fast food restaurant, and every 12 to 14 days they wouldn't go out at all, as that was purging day. That was the other big downside of the parasite. The reproductive cycle. Once every 2 weeks the afflicted vomited out a fresh batch of new slugs. Sounds fun, doesn't it? Anyways, most afflicted are like anyone else. After a while, they settle into routines. They stick to a certain territory and move in predictable ways. Patterns are bad. Predictability is worse, which is why I was pretty certain if I hung out in this White Castle just a few blocks away from where the Blood Runner had been killed, I'd see the perpetrator. Just after midnight hour passed, I was proven right. For some reason, I found that almost disappointing. I knew him almost from the moment he stepped through the door. He was skinny as a rail, but his movements were strangely quick. Almost like he dissolved Adderall into a double espresso. His eyes flicked from face to face, scanning us, looking for a target. Bloody hell, he'd really had gone rogue. Still, there was a chance that he was just a tweaker feeling paranoid, and I decided to sit back and watch. After scanning the crowd, he marched towards the counter and, completely ignoring the queue, shoved himself ahead of a grandmotherly-looking woman and grinned at the woman behind the register. "I'd like 30 cheeseburgers, 6 large fries, and a large Coke," he announced. "Yeah, definitely, my guy. Part of the appeal of White Castle is the staff were used to a certain degree of gluttony. The absurd portions that the afflicted needed didn't raise so many eyebrows. But it wasn't the order size that convinced me. It was his attitude. He acted like he owned the place. He threw off an apex predator vibe that caused a ripple of uneasiness to spread through the line behind him. This guy was going to be trouble, and I knew it. I waited for him to claim a seat, and then, casually, I stood up and walked over to his table and sat down across from him. He was on his 3rd cheeseburger by then, and only looked up when he heard the seat move. His jaw froze mid-chew. A vamp I could sneak up on. What was the world coming up to? "Hi," I said, as I favored him with a playful smile. "You have exactly 1 hour to leave town. Have a nice day." He swallowed. "Who the f—" I held out my wrist and flashed my identity bracelet at him. To an unobservant, it looked like a standard medical bracelet. It even had some bogus text printed on the underside alerting people to an unimportant allergy. However, if someone bothered to look closely, they'd notice that there was only one snake wrapped around the staff, and it was coiled the wrong way. Vampy here knew the emblem and rolled his eyes. "Blood runner," he muttered with a sneer. He was half right, actually. I belonged to the Caduceus, and they were an organization who supplied blood to the vamp community. I even still had the occasional blood run when I wasn't too busy or when they were short-handed. After all, that's where I started out in the organization. No, these days my title was actually Enforcer, and it was exactly as ominous as it sounds. I shook my head sadly. "You've been sloppy," I told him. "Too sloppy. You've been drawing attention to yourself and to the afflicted in general. So you're banished. Start over someplace with a new name and maybe we'll forget about Mikey." "Who?" he asked. "The blood runner you drained 2 nights ago," I elaborated. The corner of his lips twitched in the most fleeting of smiles. Well, that was my final confirmation. I had the right guy, all right. "He was a good kid," I said, as I lowered my voice to a whisper. "He was really trying to turn his life around. You really shouldn't have done that." "Look, human!" He spat the word out like it was a profanity. "You little caduceus bastards think that you've got us by short and curties, don't you? It's extortion. That's what it is. Your exorbitant prices for blood, like I can't get it anywhere." I sighed. Sloppy and stupid. A lethal combination. "We charge what we have to," I said. "This isn't a charity, you know. We provide a service for the afflicted. All afflicted. Even worthless ones like you. Because, at one time at least, you were nominally human, and we are a sentimental lot." His eyes darkened as his face tensed. I angered him. Good. He had gotten into the habit of thinking humans as prey. If he wanted to survive, he needed to stop that. "Look to up," he sneered. "I've let you have your fun. Now it's my turn. You don't even have an hour. Your head out that door now, and don't stop running either, because if I ever see you again, I will—" "Do you know why the afflicted like White Castle so much?" I interrupted. "It's the onions." I caught him off guard, and he shut up. That was refreshing. "It's true," I said with a nod. "That overpowering smell of onions." "You're an idiot," he declared. "Afflicted senses are so much better than humans. Now, as I said, turn around and run." "First," I said, "tell me your name." "What?" he asked. I sighed dramatically. "You never bothered learning Mickey's name," I explained. "That's rude, you know. If you kill someone, you should at least know their name." He cocked his head to one side. "You're crazy," he declared. "Look," I said, "it's easy. See, I'll show you. My name is Marcus. And you are—" "Tired of this," he answered as he surged to his feet. "I warned you, twerp. Now it's time for—" "The onions," I reminded him. "That's why." "What the hell are you going on about?" "You still don't get it," I asked. "You really are slow, aren't you?" "Okay, let me put this to you another way. Caduceus doesn't just do blood running. It's true, we're a full-service shop. We provide services for all species of afflicted. We help the ghouls find fresh corpses, grooming parlors for the werewolves, and we even supply the goblins with basic necessities. You know, most of those poor guys are so disfigured they can't even be seen in public." "Fascinating," he said. "It really is," I agreed as I stood up and stretched. "The way the parasite affects people is really erratic, isn't it? You were probably infected like most people, right? Someone at a party gave you something they claimed was a new designer drug." His fist clenched. "Either get to the point or get lost," he said. I'm getting there, I promised. "I'm just saying that, in most ways, the way the parasite affects the host is really random. Like, for example, statistically speaking, most people are more or less immune to it. They get wild hallucinations and a sense of euphoria. But that's actually the immune system fighting the parasite. It's really weird." He stepped around the side of the table. I retreated a step. "A small number," I went on, "just die, plain and simple. Their bodies can't handle it. The rest become afflicted. It just depends on the way your immune system reacts to the parasite. Some people get weird growths on their skin or deformities. Those are your goblins. Others have their hair and nails grow way too fast. Your werewolves. But some it pushes so far that their bodies are always at the edge of self-destruction. Ghouls, need a constant intake of human flesh, as their own flesh is constantly degrading, and they need to replace it. He took another step towards me, and I took another back to keep constant distance. While vamps have their own hemoglobin constantly breaking down, so they need an influx of new blood, I went on. Fascinating, when you think of it. Another step forward from him, another back from me. But the most fascinating thing of all, I went on, speaking louder and more quickly than before, is the thing it keeps the same. How it tries to make better predators out of all of its hosts. You all have enhanced senses, increased vision, hearing, and smell. I already said that, he growled, and all I smell is onions here. I stopped moving. Precisely. He froze. I saw it happen, in the way the enlightenment spread across his face at glacial speeds. He really was thick. He spun around just in time to meet the fist that had been launched towards his head. The vamp dropped. The kindly grandmother that had been cut in line ahead of drew back her fist and clapped her other hand on top of it. The vampire's jaw was askew, his face swollen, but even as I watched the parasite was going to work, I could see the bones moving as muscles tightened to draw his broken jaw back into alignment. He tried to stand. He got up on all fours when the grandmotherly woman brought her double-handed fist down on the back of head while her knee came upwards at the same time. Now that he would have a harder time shaking off. Blood fountained out the sides as his body went limp. "Oh, you poor dear," the woman cooed suddenly. I looked up and saw two employees behind the counter craning their necks for a better view. They really couldn't see what had happened due to the two very skinny but shaggy-haired biker dudes who just happened to be standing between them and the grandma. The grandmother turned and waved a hand at the two bikers. "This poor man, he slipped and fell," she squealed. "Young men, I need your help carrying him out of here." "Yes, ma'am," one of the bikers said politely. He stepped forward and, with his buddy, managed to drag the unconscious vamp to his feet with surprising ease. "Cool it, guys," I mumbled under my breath. "The guy probably weighs 160 pounds. Struggle a little." They didn't look my direction, but they must have heard me all the same as they both started grunting and straining as they wrestled the man to his feet. They marched him out of the door with the grandmother following right behind. I waved at the employees. "Just wait there," I said. "I'll find out if he needs an ambulance." I stepped out the door and found the grandmother waiting for me. Nearby, I saw the two bikers shoving something lumpy and roughly man-shaped into the trunk of a Cadillac. I shrugged. "I tried to be nice, Mrs. Parson," I commented. "I know you did, dear," she said sweetly, and she dabbed her bloody knuckles with her handkerchief. They were already scabbing over. "Some boys just have to learn things the hard way," she added. She then smiled at me and pinched my cheek. I tolerated the abuse. "I thought your name was Avery," she said at last. I shook my head. "No more than it is Marcus," I admitted. "Ah," she said with a nod. "Well, keep your little secrets if you must. But please tell me that you can work with me in with Janita. I swear, the new girl doesn't know what she's doing. 5 minutes after I leave the salon, I'm already shedding." "I think she's just got back from vacation," I admitted. "But I'll make a few calls and see if I can pull some strings." "Oh, please do," she said. "I would appreciate it." I nodded in agreement. "Oh, Avery, or Marcus, or whatever you're calling yourself," Mrs. Parson interrupted. "What do you want me to do with him?" I looked back at her. "You're the alpha of the Southside Howlers," I pointed out. "I'll leave it up to you." She beamed at me. "So, no, enforcing if someone breaks the rules?" she asked. "As far as I'm concerned, this weenie doesn't exist," I said. "So I don't see how any rules apply." "Oh, goody," she said as she clapped her hands together. She turned to face the bikers. "What would you boys say to a big old pan of Granny Parsons' special brownies?" she asked. The bikers cheered. I took that as my cue to leave. End of story. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just want to quickly thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Alithia, Barky, Beauty Cure, Meridian 117, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholz, Albard and Gusta, Savage Patch Papa,